Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of DoubleDM podcast. It is my pleasure to have you here today for the usual pre-show business. So let's get right into it. First up, and that means milestones are rolling in. So with that, I'm thrilled to announce that DoubleDM has made 2,000 listens, 3,500 Twitter followers, and now the thing that I'm most happy about, the 5th place in this year's World Podcast Hall of Fame voting. We haven't even celebrated 1 year of this podcast and we are thriving more than ever already. Okay. Moving on, cause I have to before I won't shut up about it. Spotify now also allows you to rate podcasts with stars. That means you can rate our show with 5 stars right now. Also, you can throw us a review on Apple Podcasts and rate or review us on other platforms as well. Thank you so much for your support. Our achievements could only be reached thanks to you guys. One more thing, the next episode will be on the 26th of December with the DDM Q&A, like I teased the last few episodes. With that, there's nothing left for me to do but one thing. If you want to book advertisement slots on this show, you can do so. Just message us on Twitter to make your product appear on our show. With that, have fun with the last regular episode of DDM for this year.
Hello and welcome to DoubleDM episode 46. With me, as usual, is my lovely co-host Emil. How are you doing today?
Hello.
Everything all right?
Yeah.
Good. Did anything happen this week, noteworthy or unnoteworthy?
No, not really, actually. I had a session on Tuesday, my usual Tuesday session, and we talked a little bit about the preludes for Titan's Call, but that's it.
I mean, the talks about the preludes were good, and I'm excited to record that. So, yeah. Well, did anything specific happen in your Tuesday session?
Well, the thing is, one other player wasn't there again, so the girlfriend of one of the players substituted for him again, and once again I was reminded why I love new players at the table. I mean, not new players to the system, not new players to this table, but new players to the concept of TTRPGs in general are one of the best things you can actually find, I think, because holy shit, as soon as you've encountered your first mimic, as soon as you've encountered your first fireball, as soon as you've encountered your first critical failure, you are wary of those things, right?
Yeah.
Every chest could be a mimic, but you only know that when you've once encountered a mimic. So this player, even though we didn't encounter mimics, didn't have the general TTRPG senses, you could say. They didn't, she didn't feel like she needed to do this before doing that, or thinking about it, rolling, and the excitement of rolling a critical hit or something in a new player when everyone at the table is like, yeah, and they are like, whoa!
Yeah, it just goes from 0 to 100
How are you
quick.
doing back there? R2.
Yeah, basically.
I don't even know how that's gonna sound on audio, but I think it's gonna be shit for the people. Also, I'm so sorry, everyone.
Okay, now you know we are crazy. Yeah, actually, I had a one-shot recently with a new player, but not new to TTRPGs, but new to DMing. And it was very, very fun. It was a Christmas-themed one-shot where we had to rescue Santa.
Oh, the classic.
The classic. But it's a classic for a reason. And he already homebrewed shit.
I mean, I did that as well, right? The difference is just between new DMs homebrewing, veteran DMs homebrewing is the experience in what actually is good homebrew and what is homebrew.
Yeah, true. nobody homebrewed 2 enemies. One creepy variant of Rudolph and one of Donner and Blitzen. One basically had a flashbang on his nose, and the other one was a twin-headed reindeer who dealt equal amounts of thunder and lightning damage with a charge attack.
See, that's what I mean. Good homebrew or homebrew.
Yeah. I mean, and it sparked a inspiration for the campaign he's now running, or starting to run.
Interesting.
The session 0 is Sunday evening.
Oh, Sunday evening.
And one more thing that happened. Sorry. I started playing in yet another campaign, but in a XP campaign. So I'm interested to see how this one turns out.
Not Milestone, right?
For yeah, but I'm excited still because it's TTRPGs. Of course, I'm excited.
The difference is just, do you get XP for what you do individually, or is there fair split?
I don't know yet because until now we all did everything as a group. Mm-hmm. So we'll see about that.
Yeah, no, but I mean, for example, if you get the killing blow on an enemy, do you get the XP for that enemy?
Oh no, as long as you were part of the encounter, everybody.
Right. Yeah, okay. If you're not part of the encounter, obviously you shouldn't get the XP for probably.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between everyone gets XP for what they do, or everyone gets XP for what the party does. Because one doesn't change from milestone all that much, just that it's calculated when you level up. The other is, well, it's an arms race to who gets this level first.
Yeah.
Which could be considered a lot more video gamey than milestone experience.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how the DM decides to run this.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just probably not my preferred playstyle.
Same here.
Nothing against XP. I've used it before as well, but milestone just feels it's another thing off my plate when I can just say, well, yeah, you level up.
And I think it feels more narrative than XP.
Oh yeah, milestone is definitely more narrative.
You can time the level ups based on the story you are telling.
Yeah, but the problem with milestone is that it's again in the DM's hands, right?
Exactly.
You decide when they level up.
Yeah.
XP says, well, the game says when they level up, which is a positive in my opinion. That's why, for example, I've made a tweet a few days ago about the deck of many things, and I was like, just give the deck of many things to your players twice. Let's see what happens, right? As a DM tip, give your players the deck of many things twice. And why would one do that? That's simple actually, because the deck of many things is one of the coolest magic items in D&D for not the chaos it creates. That's not even closely part of it, but because the Dungeon Master has no control over it.
Yeah.
The deck of many things just says your players pull a card and that happens. Period. You don't get any control over what happens. If they pull the void card gets used. Period.
Yeah.
You don't have any say in that. Giving your players wish is same because the DM has no control over that.
Yeah.
It's the perfect example of player agency, and I believe that the deck of many things could be a very interesting tool to help DMs get better at improv. So
definitely,
if you have a campaign where you want to get better at improv, just put a deck of many things in the hands of your players and try to run with it. Don't prepare for it, just run with it.
Yeah.
Most players won't pull many cards anyway. They won't pull all cards. So you don't even have to have any stopping mechanisms to it, so your players don't overuse the item, because the item inherently is also bad for them. And that alone creates this. Your players won't use the item too often, and when they pull a card, it's a special moment, and you can run with that. You don't have to prepare. It doesn't happen too often.
One question about that real quick. Do you have read about the deck of illusions? I haven't. That's why I'm asking. Do you know how it works? Is it similar to the deck of many things?
Where was the deck of illusions even? What is that even? I heard about it. I never seen it before, actually.
It's also in the DMG, because if it's similar to functioning-wise to the deck of many things, and you're not comfortable with giving your players the abilities to, or what the deck of many things does, but still want to get better at improv, you could use the deck of illusions because it's similar in a way, if it is
an illusion,
at all.
Only if cards are drawn at random, you can use another deck. You can use an illusion. Oh, that's the deck of illusions. Ah, okay. Yeah. That works as well, but I think
it's not as iconic as the Deck of Many Things.
It isn't even about the iconic factor. It's one effect you can prepare for. If you have the Deck of Many Things, you never know if your players draw Knight or Void or Ruin,
whatever,
or Star. You don't know what they're gonna draw. Here, you know they will always draw Illusion, so you can prepare for Illusion.
Okay. Yeah.
It works as well, yes, but I believe that if you again, it's for fun.
Definitely.
If you have a serious campaign and the Deck of Many Things does not fit, don't use it. That's to be said, right? Don't just follow what I say blindly. But I believe that the Deck of Many Things is one of the best things you can do if you want your players to feel that they have agency.
Oh yeah.
Because this deck is solely their decision. I realized that when I gave my players basically a potion of scrying, you have 3 potions of scrying. You can scry on any person on the plane of existence you are on. What do you do? Did not prepare for what person they're gonna scry on. Did not prepare for when they're gonna use it. Just gave it to them. And now it's in their hands. They can decide when, who, and then I can make up what do they actually see.
Yeah.
And like, if they wanna use that to check on their goblin friend they met 6 months ago, then they can do that. If they want to use that to scry on a person that they believe is an enemy of theirs, they can do that. But it allows them to actually have more agency than the Deck of Many Things and the Scrying spell and Sending spell, for example. All these spells that, like, all the things where you think, well, I have to improvise on that. That's scary. Those are the things that actually create the agency above and beyond what D&D normally does.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe using these things is important.
Yeah, especially the Scrying or Sendings, because you're forced to make shit up.
Yeah. Like, people say the Wish spell is broke. First of all, it's a 9th level spell. No, it isn't broken. It should be like that, how it is.
They are supposed to be broken.
Second of all, it has a lot of mechanical restraints that, in my opinion, shouldn't even be there necessarily. I know why they're there, obviously, but really, I don't care. But really, the Wish spell is just like Scrying, just like the Deck of Many Things. It's perfect for your players to feel the agency. The problem is the Wish spell is a 9th level spell and no one really ever gets to that point of using it. Yeah. So the Scrying spell is a lot more low level, and I realized none of my players can actually cast the Scrying spell ever. So I gave them the potion and said, well, now you deal with that. And they've discussed for like 30 minutes at the table, how are we gonna use this? And I think that's the fun of it, right?
Oh yeah, I think that covers my week.
Mine as well. Yeah.
So shall we get into the episode?
We shall get into the episode. We will meet each other back after the ads for our episode on traps. GemMedFirefly.com combines nerdy interest and aesthetic attitude into one awesome store. Find shirts of the highest quality and softest comfort along with home items such as mugs, blankets and flags. Collections like the Dungeon Glitch geeky designs or the spicy not safe for work section offer a variety of unique graphics perfect for your message, attitude and lifestyle. Profits from the shop have planted thousands of trees to fight hunger and climate change, while also supporting notable charities and game community causes. Check out the link below or visit gemfirefly.com and skim your favorite shirts right now.
The Lords of Gallipay patron page is just as customizable as the Trail of Heroes character creation, allowing you to access different Lords of Gallipay content like character portrait, loot charts, and access to the game Trail of Heroes standard. If you sub at higher tiers, you gain the ability to vote for the next month's big content and access to maps every 2 weeks for you to use. Plus access to all the bonus content for Trail of Heroes Standard. Check out the Patreon page in the description below. And with that, welcome back to the episode. Now we are talking about traps. So let's get things straight. First things first. What is a trap? What do we mean when we say trap?
Okay, first of all, what is a trap? When you Google that, you basically find something along the lines of a mechanism used to trap animals. Something along the lines of a construction which is supposed to catch animals. That's at least the most basic definition you can think of. But obviously, we're not necessarily talking about animals. We're talking about people too. You can also design traps to catch people, to incapacitate people. It's not necessarily about catching people. It could also be to incapacitate them, which could be considered also catching. A mechanism, mostly, that is used to catch, incapacitate, maybe even kill things. And now, my definition is a little bit more along the lines of, especially with TTRPGs in mind, it is a mechanism either on the actual mechanical side or maybe even a magical side, right? That's something you need to think of. Is there are also magical traps, for example, in D&D. So you have traps, which are basically just things to catch, kill adventurers, things, mechanisms meant to trigger in the case of an intruder or someone that has no knowledge of that trap. Yeah.
Alrighty.
When you think about it, the term trap, right, never really been defined.
Yeah, it's just been used.
Yeah. Okay. For D&D purposes, what I find on Roll20.net is a trap can be either mechanical or magical in nature. Mechanical traps include pits, arrow traps, falling blocks, water-filled rooms, whirling blades, and anything else that depends on a mechanism to operate. Magic traps are either magical devices, traps, or spell traps. Magical devices initiate spell effects when activated. Spell traps are spells such as a glyph of warding and symbols that function as traps. A trap can be found nearly anywhere. One wrong step in an ancient tomb might trigger a series of scything blades which cleave through armor and bone. They seemingly innocuous vines that hang over a cave entrance might grasp and choke anyone who pushes through them. A net hidden among the trees might drop on a traveler who passes underneath. In a fantasy game, unwary adventurers can fall to their deaths, be burned alive, or fall under a fusillade of poisoned darts. So there's nothing actually about the definition of a trap in there. It's just these things are traps. But what do we count as a trap? I don't know.
Anything that catches you by surprise.
Yeah. Anything that catches you by surprise, anything that is meant to harm you is a trap for you. Should be something that damages you, or not damages you, but something that is against you. We don't count puzzles, in my opinion.
Yeah, because puzzles are something different.
Yeah, but how do you differentiate between the two?
I think a trap should be avoided, while a puzzle can serve as some sort of key to something.
Okay, a trap is a simple way to stop you from venturing further into a dungeon or venturing further into any direction, really, which is meant to harm you and surprise you. I think that is kind of what the thing is why we talk about this, right? For the listeners who might be wondering why we spend so much time on this definition, is we need to define what a trap is to actually ask, how do we make traps work? How do we work with them? And in D&D, traps are, you walk into the trap, you roll a saving throw, and then you get hit with a trap, or not.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing.
So it surprises you. Yeah, okay. I think we can move on from this, but just think about what a trap actually means for you is already the first thing of this episode. What actually is a trap? Because when you have that, you can basically well define how to make your traps.
I mean, the first question in nearly every hour of our discussion is always some sort of trap, because it sounds simple at first, but then we delve into the question and try to define stuff that is basically basic knowledge most of the time if you talk about it, and everyone accepts it, but putting your finger on it and finding a common definition might be more challenging than you'd expect.
Yeah, and I think we have actually reached that point here, right? We all know what a trap is, but has anyone ever actually written down or thought of an exact definition of what is a trap? Even if it's only for them, right? It doesn't have to be universal, definitely not, but I've never actually written down or thought about an actual definition, what is a trap, until now.
Neither have I, because there wasn't any need to do so.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows what a trap is.
Okay, I want to move on. Maybe we can define the trap through the next points.
Yeah.
My question to you is, traps need to be placed somewhere.
Exactly.
Where can you place traps?
It depends on the purpose of the trap. But as the examples in Roll20, for example, told, it can be at the entrance of whatever kind of structure, or at the treasure of some kind of structure, or on the way out of some sort of structure. These are basically the 3 points where you could put traps that make sense. Trying to hinder someone from entering, trying to hinder someone from getting something, and trying to hinder someone from leaving the they have already entered.
Yeah, I think generally hindering someone from something is actually very good for a trap.
Yeah.
That is kind of the purpose of a trap most of the time, but we can dive deeper into what kind of purposes specific traps have. But generally you can place traps everywhere, right? Hunting traps, which are maybe not for people, but are placed randomly in the wild to trap the beings you want to trap with that, whatever you want to trap, right? And that's the same. You can place a pitfall anywhere you want, as long as you can dig the hole.
Yeah.
You can place a poison dart trap anywhere you have a mechanism to shoot those darts and a way to activate that shooting mechanism. You can place a magical trap anywhere where you have the possibility to plant a magical trap, whatever you need for that, right? You can place traps anywhere, and I think that adds a lot already to how traps are supposed to be perceived. They can be everywhere. You should be wary of them, right? Traps can be everywhere. You theoretically, you can say nowhere is safe from traps.
Exactly. But does it make sense to put a trap everywhere?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? You need to ask yourself, why is this trap here? Or even better, before placing the trap, why should there be a trap here? Or why is something here? And then, okay, this thing would place traps. It places traps. Very simply put, the easiest thing everyone can think of in Dungeons and Dragons is a dungeon. Someone is protecting something in that dungeon using the traps.
Exactly.
Very, very simple. More advanced could be traps in the wilderness while people travel through maybe territory of, I don't know, a tribe that lives in this jungle that have placed traps to keep intruders out. Magical traps in a mage tower or in a mage's domain or mansion or whatever could be to keep, again, intruders out. So generally, traps are made to keep intruders away from something, keep someone away from something, from their goal. If you place a trap in a hallway, that trap basically conveys, no, you're not getting through here, or you're not supposed to get through here.
Exactly.
Right? You could place a trap under the loot in the dungeon, which is, you're not getting this loot. Right? Traps are always defined with a purpose.
Yeah.
They are placed with a purpose, and that purpose is always stopping something from something, basically.
Exactly.
Traps are not made to make it easier for the people getting the treasure or going through this hallway. That's not what traps are for. Traps are meant to stop you. So then you can think about, what are these traps made for, right? The purpose of this trap is then, what is this supposed to stop or to catch? What traps target?
Exactly.
If you make a simple trap for rabbits, a human will never walk into that because it's just too small, right? That's easy, but it's not designed for humans. So if you're in a dungeon and the dungeon is meant to keep, for example, only dwarves out, why ever, then the traps would be designed against dwarves. Maybe not against humans or elves, but only dwarves.
Yeah.
Right? Thinking about what this trap is meant to do, and especially what the target of this trap is very important in designing it.
One other thing regarding what a trap is meant to do, it doesn't always have to be just inflict physical harm. That's not always the case, because you can always just design a trap to just capture someone. So you can then, for example, process them through bureaucracy or give them a trial if they wanted to steal something. All of this, you don't always have to just make rocks fall and everybody dies. That's not always needed. It depends on who is setting the trap and what for.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the animal traps don't kill the animal outright. They are just there to slow the animal down so the hunter can then finish off the animal safely.
Mm-hmm.
And so this could be a thing, for example, in a huge mansion or territory of your big bad. Could place any amount of traps they want just to slow you down and weaken you to then finish you off on their own.
So we already said place traps wherever they make sense, but also place traps where, like, right, that sense isn't only just about the target of the trap, but also about the person building the trap, right?
Exactly.
It wouldn't make that much sense to place a trap that is unavoidable, where even the one that built the trap has to go through the trap all the time.
Exactly.
Well, sure, the trap is unavoidable, which is good. The trap being unavoidable means that everyone has to go through this trap. The trap is a choke point. But then you need to think about how would, for example, someone that has built the trap make sure they don't get caught in their own trap.
And I think with this, we get to one interesting point regarding triggers of traps.
Mm-hmm.
Because depending on what sort of trigger the person has set for the trap, it is avoidable for someone who knows where the trap is or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Simplest trigger of a trap is a pressure plate or
a tripwire, or
both of these are very simple, tried and tested, right? They work, basically.
Yeah.
If you know where not to step, you will just step over that pressure plate. Easy peasy, you avoid the trap, all is good. If you know where the tripwire is, you just step over, easy peasy, avoid, all good. Both of these are very easy seeable triggers, which brings me to one of the important parts about traps. People can see them.
Yeah.
Depending on the trap, you need to think about how it looks to people.
Yeah.
Because pressure plate needs to have a mechanism behind it that allows it to actually shift down. So if an adventurer is looking for pressure plates, they are probably, if they roll high enough, gonna find that pressure plate, because they asked, first of all, they asked for it and rolled high enough. But right, a pressure plate is not hard to detect if you're looking for one. Same
Exactly.
with the tripwire. You see these things.
I mean, traps are supposed to be stealthy, but not invisible.
Well,
or this is just most of the time they are described as such.
Yeah, right. The thing is, a trap only works if the target doesn't seize the trap, because the trap is supposed to be a surprise, as we said. If a trap isn't a surprise, it just can get avoided, because as we said right before this, traps need to be avoidable, so the builder of that trap can actually get around this trap. Like, for example, you have a poison dart trap, right? Very simple pressure plate, boom, get a poison dart in your face or somewhere, right?
Yeah.
If the builder of that trap had to go through that process every single time, getting hit by a poison dart, I mean, that's the equivalent of you opening a door and getting punched in the face every time you do it. And that's because you decided that's okay. Why would you make that decision to think it's okay to get punched in your face every time you open your bedroom door, right?
Yeah, it's somewhere where you have to
sense.
go and you can't avoid anything about it. Isn't really good trap design.
Yeah. So, and especially also, it just isn't fun to play with the trap that's unavoidable for you, right? You have the saving throw, so you can avoid the trap, but right, I think if you can only avoid a trap by rolling the saving throw, that's kind of boring.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. I'm not saying that we should get rid of saving throws for traps, because I think saving throws are good. They are a neat mechanic, in my opinion. The thing is just, when I look at this, I think if I know the trap is coming, I can avoid it. So trap detection is important. But also, if I don't know a trap is coming, there might be still a chance that I avoid it, right? But that's also not fun, right? Generally, when I'm in a dungeon, I expect that there are traps.
Yes.
That's one important thing to preface. As a player, I like getting hit by traps, but only if those traps actually are fun to engage with. A fun hidden mechanic to figure out how to avoid this trap, not just a saving throw. It feels too boring.
There needs to be something that you as a player can do to avoid the trap without actually triggering it and just taking the full blow of it.
Yeah, exactly. If I'm triggering the trap and I get hit by a poison dart and need to make a dex saving throw, hey, that's okay. That's the game. That's totally fine. But if there is no other way than for me to make that dex saving throw, especially as a low dex character, that's not gonna be fun. They are a barrier to work with, traps. That's why they're fun. They are things you can put in your player's path to slow them down, to hinder them, and to challenge them. And that's why you should use them. They are challenges. They are fun challenges if you make them fun. It's not fun if I just have to make a saving throw and be done with it. That's just one dice roll. Then you can just say you take this amount of damage when you roll this and be done with it. Then you don't have to have an engaging trap. But if the trap is engaging in, if I can disarm it, I can detect it before, I can work with it, maybe I can actually find something out with it, right? Maybe the trap actually gives me a hint to who built this.
Yeah.
That is engaging. A trap isn't just something to slow your players down. It's more than just a simple challenge or just a simple barrier. It's, right? Okay. A trap is more than just a simple barrier. It's a fun challenge. Make it a fun challenge for your players in whatever way you see possible. Sometimes traps, if you get hit by a trap and have nothing against it and can't engage with that trap, you're not gonna have fun with that trap.
Yeah, that's where I like the homebrew rule we use for Titan's Call.
Yeah, exactly. That one of the rules that we use for Titan's Call is a rule that I call click. When my players trigger a trap and they hear the mechanism behind it, they hear a click, which basically stops game time for a short second, for a few seconds. 20 seconds is, I think, for Titan's Call. I've made it shorter than in my usual home games where it's 30 seconds because we also are only 3 players. You all have time to think about your initial reaction to that trap. No talking between each other, just thinking. And when the 20 seconds are over, I'm gonna ask you, what are you doing? Everybody declares their initial reaction because the mechanism behind that trap will need at least a short half second or second to work or
especially
react,
if it's
right?
mechanical.
Yeah, and I decided, okay, well, let's see what they do, because especially if they're on their guard, if you're in a dungeon looking out for everything, being on watch, and you hear this click, you don't just stand around and wait for something to happen. You try to jump back, you jump forward, you jump down, you maybe just get your shield out and hold it in front of you or whatever, right? I give you the chance to engage with this trap more already. It gives you a chance to basically break my trap. It's what I call it. Even though you don't break it, because that action you do allows you to roll a skill check or whatever. Then we find out what that action you do actually does. And that gives you a little bonus to your saving throw. If there is a poison dart trap and the poison dart shoots at you and you hold your shield in front of you, that's gonna add a little bit to your dex save because you're harder to hit for that arrow. Or maybe you're not getting hit at all, but the trap is still there. And that way, traps get way more engaging already without actually breaking the way I like traps, with a saving throw, with a way to maybe stop my players a little bit, give them a challenge, slow them down, or even damage them, expend some of their resources. Maybe you're gonna use a potion or something to deal with a trap. I still get the resources you spend, right? Traps are places where you spend resources. Those things, in my opinion, aren't even lost if I give you this initial reaction. It doesn't have to be big, right? You can't cast a spell, you can't make an attack roll or something, but just this, I duck, I hold my shield up that I have ready, or I scream, get down to the other two. Even though I don't get down, they can get down or something, right? I think that initial reaction is a lot of how, for me, traps work. I like it when my traps, that initial reaction for me just works great, in my opinion.
Yeah, and what I like to do is give my players the ability to disarm a trap if they have spotted it, because this is a huge part of traps as well. They are able to be disarmed. If they are just set up and can't be dealt with ever, that's maybe not a good design choice. But if you have the ability to cut the tripwire, so no pressure or pulling or tension can activate the mechanism, this is good. Now you have a countermeasure against traps. Or the classic thing is a negative pressure plate. Like, a pressure plate is triggered all the time, and when you remove something, the mechanism itself triggers. Something like this has been done in a lot of heist movies, for example. You have to get something roughly the same weight to put on the same pressure plate at the exact same time you lift up the desired item, so the trap doesn't trigger. For example, an alarm, or in Indiana Jones it would be the rolling boulder or something like this. Those are things that are a lot of fun to do when you are in a player situation where you see, okay, I see the trap, but we need the thing on that altar or on the pedestal or anything like this. And we know there is a trap beneath it, but we want to get there anyways. How can we get there? Not just, roll a sleight of hand check to see if you do it. Could be one way. It could be one way to, for example, the artificer just goes in there with his small tools and tries to break the mechanism itself, or not trigger the pressure plate at all, or something like this. This is a lot of fun as a player, in my experience at least.
Yeah. I mean, that adds again to the engagement of a trap. If a trap is more than just one dice roll and walking onwards, it's gonna be fun. And I think basically everyone does this, right? That's not necessarily a hot take, but generally, if you think about it with a little bit of common sense, if there's a trap, there needs to be some way to disarm it, or at least to work with it, to work around it. Yeah. And everyone does that, in my opinion. I've never seen a dungeon master really not allow their players to either try to disarm the trap, right? If they're not succeeding, that's okay. But if they can try. Disarming it, going around it, destroying it, anything really. To engage with that, then just taking the damage and the saving throw you have to do for this poison dart trap or whatever. And everyone does that, and that's fine, and that's basically all I want. I want engaging traps. I want to be engaged as they are a tool, not just something to wear down my resources, be it HP, spell slots, items, but also to engage me, to give me a moment to play my character, to play what would my character do with this trap. Well, they are a tank. Maybe they will actually be the one that just pushes forward with their shield out in front of them, so all the poison darts get lodged in the shield and not in them, and everyone can move in a line behind them, and there will only be a few darts flying to the people behind them.
Yeah.
That is a cool moment. That
Definitely.
is cool. That is fun play. But just rolling a saving throw and getting damage and then saying, well, now let's walk through this dungeon further. Well, then you could have also not put the trap there.
Exactly. For example, I think monks have a really cool way to avoid traps that lay on the ground flat, like tripwires or pressure plates in D&D, because they can run along walls. They can just parkour off of the other walls in the dungeon and over the area where the trap or the traps are. And then maybe there is a mechanism to disarm every trap in front of them. And then they can send in the monk first. The monk parkours off the walls over to the other side, disarms all the traps with one lever, and then everybody's safe. That's also a cool move.
One of the coolest traps, I don't know if we would call it traps, I ever encountered and have used after that is a bridge with 20 steps, 20 blocks swinging from side to side.
Okay.
Every time you step on a certain numbered thing, you need to roll a dice. If that dice number equals the number you step on, you get hit by this block or are about to get hit. What do you do?
Ooh, that sounds fun.
That is fun. It's super dangerous. And for example, mages can easily circumvent it by using the teleport spell or dimension door or something.
Yeah, but still. Awesome.
Fighters or barbarians with a high strength can maybe try to catch this boulder, right? There isn't much, like, yes, maybe that's not the best trap, but I like it so much because it's so open. It leaves a lot of room for players to play out their character to however they want. And that's one important part about traps for me. Let your players outplay you, right? It isn't the right word because they are not outplaying you. It's about playing together, this game. It's not about against each other, but when they put a trap, let them work this trap out and basically circumvent it completely. That's why traps need to be in some way avoidable, in my opinion. Every path leads to this trap, but that trap can still be jumped over or teleported over or whatever, right? And when your players find that way, that's such a rewarding moment for them, and you need to let them have that moment because that is what makes traps fun. If they work, that's a fun experience because people can work with that, but if they actually overcome the trap in a creative way, that's the fun of traps.
Oh yeah.
Not the saving throw and damage. That's not the fun part of it, but actually engaging with the trap. That is the fun way.
Yeah. Or for example, just one thing I just had in mind. The group of adventurers just walks down a pressure plate and poison darts come from the front. And the barbarian would be able to just withstand the poison because peak human performance in body, in constitution, and in strength. He would just, even if I get hit, I can shrug off the poison, no problem at all. But if he notices that the wizard would get hit by one of those poison darts, why not just try to throw himself in front of the wizard to protect the wizard by using themselves as a meat shield, basically, because he can take it, but the wizard can't. That's something fun you can do, and this would be playing your character if your character would do something like this.
Yeah. Okay, I want to move on and just collect a few, for example, trap triggers. We talked about tripwires, we talked about pressure plates and anti-pressure plates. What is something else?
Levers, buttons.
Levers, buttons, anything that really is mechanical that players can engage with. The simplest mechanism in the book. No mechanism at all, just a pitfall.
Yeah.
There is no mechanism, just that the floor caves in at some point is a trigger for a trap, for example. One thing I really like, what I did once was when my players entered like this high secured building, there was someone that basically had motion sensors everywhere. That's for a sci-fi setting, but basically a motion sensor or a camera works as well. Right, you can translate that to TTRPGs, maybe an arcane eye or a magical effect, right? Just to detect magic or something.
Yeah.
Works. Anything really. Those things are, I think, the basics, and you can use any one of that for whatever you want. Just make sure that it would make sense for the trapper to put that trap there. Make sense that where the trap is put and that trigger is easy to understand. Because when a trigger isn't easy to understand, players can't engage with the trap because they can't figure out how the trigger works. If they can't figure out how the trigger works, they will not figure out how the rest of the trap works. So make the trigger something easy and understandable for your players.
One thing you have the freedom to do in TTRPGs, there's also the side of magic. You can also put magic triggers in traps as well. Like if something is read out loud or said out loud, a specific sort of word that is maybe carved in stone somewhere on the walls over and over and over again could trigger this. But this borderlines puzzles again, sometimes they overlap, but not perfectly.
There is overlap in this, and I think everyone knows that. I want to ask you though.
Yeah.
Now we've talked about the triggers. What comes after the trigger? Possible effects that a trap can trigger.
The most basic one everybody knows is the classic damage effect. Like, it doesn't have to be a specific kind of damage. It can be rocks falling. It can be poison darts. It can be slashing blades. It could be fireballs. It could be lightning. It could be a pitfall. So just fall damage could be a thing. All these kinds of things, just physical harm, you could say. One thing would be, I would consider crowd control, to say the least. Like snares, cages, nets, anything that stops people from moving.
Yeah, that as
or
well.
Or terrain manipulation, like making stairs a smooth ramp could be one thing.
A classic.
Yeah. Opening the door or a floor, just opening up to something. It doesn't have to lead to damage, but just leading to something else.
Yeah. One other effect, which is very interesting, is detection.
Ooh, yeah.
When you, for example, the alarm spell, one of the most simple spells in D&D, in my opinion. You draw this alarm field around your camp. Something walks through it. Ding, 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 ding.
And you know exactly where the alarm was triggered.
It doesn't even have to be like that. That isn't necessarily like the basic definition of a trap, but alerting someone or something that of the presence of the players now is also a huge effect.
I mean, especially in a more modern setting, something
alarms,
like
right?
Alarms or laser barriers. The classic thing you see in, for example, Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
All these laser beams everywhere they have to avoid, and they blow smoke towards it so they can see them better, would be another way to engage with these sort of traps more. And these laser beams, let's call it that, aren't there to deal damage. They're there to alarm other people, to give information to the one who set the trap. It's all just a game about information in these sort of situations.
Another thing could be magical effects or other conditions. Blindness, deafness aren't necessarily crowd controls, but boy, if you've ever been blinded as a party in a dungeon for like 1 minute and not communicated right in that moment, someone might walk forward, someone might walk backwards. It's chaos.
Yeah, and 1 minute can be a long ass time. It can get pretty
That's chaotic. 10 rounds in D&D, right? 10 rounds of combat. Other things could be magical influence, like a charm effect. Interesting. Fun. Very interesting. Those are, again, the basics. You can think about a lot more if you want to. And think about what makes sense, what works with the trigger. That's also important now as well. And then also think about, does it make sense for the one that set the trap? Does it make sense in this environment? And how is this engaging? Once again, blindness is engaging. What do you do now? Now you're blind. The damage is also theoretically engaging because what type of damage is it?
Yeah.
Right? Is it bludgeoning damage?
Does the wound need to be treated?
Does the wound need to be treated? That's not necessarily a thing in D&D, but we're not talking about D&D specifically, right? We're talking about anything. Maybe your D&D has injuries. Maybe this trap inflicts injuries or whatever. One other thing that I've just thought about is destroying items.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this. You walk through a hallway, see a trap, walk through it, nothing happens, boom, all your healing potions are destroyed.
Oh, yeah. This is,
There again, did the players have a way to engage with that trap? And especially for example, one thing for engagement is, like we already talked about a lot, detection. What I do for detection is, right, maybe my players not detect the actual trap that I want to spring, but placing an already sprung and destroyed trap in the beginning of a dungeon makes your players attentive for traps.
They should be aware of that there are traps.
Sorry. They know there are traps. And now we're talking about how do they then detect other traps? What ways are there?
Again, depends on the trigger or the mechanism behind the trap. But for example, scratch marks next to a torch holder could be one thing that you can turn the torch holder. Or one plate on the ground is a little more worn down or it doesn't fit exactly like the others do. Or you can see a little twinkle or sparkle from the tripwire reflecting light of your torch back at you.
Yeah, I mean, those things work, right? Descriptions of the place where the trap is are important. One thing, though, that includes is then you need to make descriptions of places where there are no traps as well, because if you're only engaging with the position of the trap, players might start metagaming the trap and right. But generally, right, scratch marks, irregularities, like we've already said in other episodes, irregularities are something that players will pay attention to. Or just simply let them tell you, I am looking for traps, and then make a perception, investigation, whatever check. Let them describe how they are looking for traps, though. Because maybe their way of looking for a trap actually doesn't help them with a certain type of trap.
Oh, yeah.
If they are looking for pressure plates or something on the ground, they might not notice the laser at the top, right? That's basic.
Yeah.
Right, simple. But if they're saying I'm looking at the ground for tripwires and there aren't any tripwires or pressure plates, then they might be out of luck when it comes to traps. So yeah, traps should be engaging. It's something I can always revert back to. Make them engaging, and you can do that. It's simple. Everyone does that. Just never fall into haha, this trap gotcha, haha, fun, let's move on.
Yeah.
You can also just place a combat there. That's more fun.
Definitely.
Than an unengageable trap. So yeah, for countermeasures, right, we talked about disarming, destroying, avoiding the trap, right? Especially with detection, if you detect the trap, maybe you detect the trap by triggering it at least once. That's okay. I don't think you actually should define any countermeasures against your traps.
No, definitely not.
For example, right, some traps have, like traps when you get a module or something, have a disarm DC. That's okay, right? Thinking about how hard it is to actually disarm this trap or something. But don't think too much about how to disarm it. Just let your players explain to you how they want to do it. And if they want to know more about this mechanism behind that trap, just make something simple up. But don't think too much about how your players should disarm it, because you are not planning for your players.
Exactly. And again, to the countermeasures, this is where the click rule comes in really good, because you get the time to choose your countermeasures when once you've triggered the trap.
Yeah, your initial countermeasure, right?
Exactly.
It isn't I throw a fireball so the trap gets destroyed, but I jump back to maybe avoid the damage and then to actually engage with the trap.
Exactly. This is just something. Countermeasures don't always have to avoid the trap completely or nullifying the effect of the trap, but dampening the impact of whatever type of effect the trap the trapper chose this trap to have.
Yeah, and again, this initial reaction isn't my players get the description of where they are, but they don't get to ask other questions really, except they are questions they need to decide. But really, they don't know if a poison arrow is coming or if the floor is gonna cave down under them. So maybe jumping forward and ducking is better than jumping backwards, because the dart is still gonna hit you.
Yeah.
So you can also just fall into my trap and get more damage, get the saving throw at disadvantage or something. That happens, right? Every trap is a unique moment where your players get to do something. And I believe with this click rule, I made it so they get to engage with the trap when it's triggered, because that's the moment that some people have talked about they don't like, because it's unengaging. It takes the normal players can do what they want away from role playing, right? I don't have strong opinions on that really. I just think make your traps engaging. Everyone does that, even if I have to get hit by it first. Happens. But yeah, that click rule is just so I believe the initial reaction, which will be part of especially characters that are, for example, trained adventurers, they would have that initial reaction, and I let you guys have that.
They just have this embedded in their mind. I just triggered something. Shit, I need to do something.
And if it works, it works. If not, it not.
Yeah, I mean, if you and me just walk into a trap, we probably wouldn't do a thing, because we would be startled by, shit, why did the pressure, what is happening? Bam.
Yeah, exactly. Right, that's the thing. You have this 20 seconds, and if you don't answer after those 20 seconds, you forfeit your action.
Yeah.
Then you don't do anything again. You just stand there because you're startled. Maybe I will also not use the click rule at some point, because I think you guys would be too startled in that moment. That's also something.
I just thought of one thing regarding effects that just popped into my head. Would be environmental changes. Something that doesn't really come into play immediately, but like slowly turning up the temperature every so often. Gases, or the water level is starting to rise.
That's
something like this can be a lot of fun. I just
That's a good
thought
one.
of that.
Yeah, the water level rising is a good one as well.
And I mean, then there is the cleric or the wizard just casting water breathing and you're fine. But this is something that needs to be done then.
But then again, that's fun. The player that has water breathing prepared as a wizard feels like they've prepared correctly, feels like they've engaged with the trap in a fun way to work around it. It's a challenge. And right, what we dungeon masters do most of the time is present challenges to our players and let them figure out how to deal with that. Traps shouldn't be any different.
I mean, they are just that.
Yeah.
A different type or a different flavor of challenge for your players.
They are just a challenge for your players to deal with. Make them engaging. Engagement is not roll a dex check, or you failed to take this amount of damage, or you succeeded, you take this amount of damage. We can move on now. Then it's not a challenge. Then it's just wearing down on them, which is okay. That's what they are in the world designed to do. But
from a play design
at least I don't
standpoint,
like it,
not
right?
fun.
I don't like it. I want there to be some engagement behind it. So yeah, to summarize this with one question to you. How do you design a good trap?
Or you should think about a triggering mechanism, the effect the trap would have, why it is placed where it is placed, and following that where it is placed, by whom it has been placed, and what it should accomplish. And the possibility for countermeasures, detection, disarming, destroying, etc.
Yeah, you need to have that open, right? You don't need to write it down. Just need to be open to player creativity.
Exactly. That would conclude my answer to that question.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I don't think I have anything really to add, right? One thing I want to say is design your traps how you like. You can make anything a trigger. You can make anything an effect that makes sense in your setting, in your game, in your world, in your place where you place it, whatever. Just keep engagement at the table in mind for everything you do with traps, because that's why we're playing.
Exactly. And with that, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at DoubleDMPod. You can visit our website, www.doubledm.com. You can also donate to us on Ko-fi, and keep tuning in to check out news about our upcoming actual play, Titan's Call. And with that, thanks for listening. Hear you on the next one, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.